Welcome to the Releasing Community podcast. This is a place where we share our love for releasing and the Sedona Method. We share our benefits, our insights, and our experiences. Everything we learned and experienced from using the Sedona Method. I am Katja Törmänen, and me and Stephen Robert Carlson will be hosting this podcast. And today our guest is Paolo Thiery. I hope I pronounce it somewhat right. And Paolo has been helping people for the past 20 years using several holistic techniques for well-being. He has used the Sedona Method for 7 years. He has completed the Facilitator Training and taken part in many courses and retreats. Very lovely to have you here, Paolo. Welcome.
Thank you, Katja. Thank you, Stephen, for inviting me. It's a pleasure. Thank you.
And let us start with the question we ask everybody. So how did you find the Sedona Method?
Yeah, it was 2016. I remember that from time to time I Google just to keep myself updated. I try to Google on releasing, using some keywords like releasing, emotional fitness, I don't know, something like that, using the words that in that moment resonated with me. I think I was looking for emotional releasing, something like that. Mm-hmm. I came across to this technique called this. Of course, I scrolled through several techniques which I looked into, of course. Then I came across to this technique called the Sedona Method. The name was strange because usually, a technique doesn't have the name of the city or something like that. I found, I remember at that time there were several printouts available on the web. They were mostly in English language. Mm-hmm. Explaining briefly what the Sedona Method was. So mostly the three famous basic questions: could you, would you, when? To be honest, at first I thought, how is it possible that a technique is based only on three silly questions like these ones? Mm-hmm. So it was not a very good impact. But then I went to, I was attracted to the website, the original website, sedona.com. There was a kind of energy which really resonated with me. I don't know what it was. It was an energetic attraction. So I wanted to give a chance to that technique. Because I said, okay, the questions seems very silly, but let's deepen. So I Googled again Sedona Method. I came across to some papers which had also some releasing on the wantings. And that started to resonate a little bit more with me. I said, okay, yeah, the wantings are the main program. So, of course, there is a wanting for control, for approval, security, and so on. It has a sense. Now it starts to make a sense because just could you, would you, when seems something very silly at that moment. Then, of course, I changed my mind later, but at the beginning it was a weird impact. And then I remember that I came across also to the PDF version of the book of Hale, the Sedona Method, which you can find on internet. I started to study that book. Along with the studying, I use it for releasing. I said to myself, Paolo, this is an amazing technique. First of all, the way that Hale has to explain is amazingly beautiful. It was something that spoke directly to my heart. So it was really truth speaking. I said, yeah, it's right. The resistance, the wantings, everything had a rightful place. And so I remember that I studied the entire book in, I don't know, many days. 5, 6 days, 7 days, something like that. And then I decided to buy the 401 super course, I think it was the name of the course, which is the basic and advanced course together. I discovered that it was the application mostly of the book, actually. It's the same content with the application, exercises, some workbook to write some exercises. I listened to I don't know if there were 20 CDs or something like that, even though it was an MP3 version. I didn't buy the original physical CDs, but I bought the MP3 version, the digital version. I said, this is a technique which really resonates with me. Of course, I was still practicing the many techniques which I already know, which I'm teaching, other stuff like that. But I noticed that the Sedona Method was a missing piece, something very useful that could be a complement to whatever I was doing in that moment, because it didn't offset anything. It was just something that could be added to what I was already doing. So it was really perfect. I started releasing every day, 2, 3, 4 hours a day. I became like another Hale that at the beginning started releasing every moment. So every time, I remember that when I was without fruit, I started asking myself, is there any desire for approval in this moment, or for control, or for oneness? Yeah, maybe a little bit. Could you welcome that? Could you let it go? So it was really funny. I started also the same year. I mean, it was. I did the first retreat in 2017 in Elspet in the Netherlands, and it was a physical retreat, a European
Oh, you
physical
were there
retreat.
too. Oh,
I felt that you could, yeah, I wasn't sure, but I had a feeling that also
yep.
yourself could be there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go
It
ahead.
was a very nice retreat, right? It was a very. I remember that it was my first live experience. I met Hale, I met a lot of people. I remember also that I had a question. As soon as Hale opened the floor to questions, sharing in the system, the first hand in all the room was mine. So I was invited. I was invited on stage, and it was nice. I mean, the presence of Hale was nice. I found Hale a very nice person, very likable, very kind. So it was really nice. Also during the breaks, I remember that I asked Hale some questions. I remember that one of the first questions that I asked Hale in Elspet during a break was, what can I do to become a coach of this technique? So I had a clear idea of what I wanted. And Hale told me, at the moment we haven't a coaching program, but there is the facilitator training, which is a prerequisite. Also participating in a retreat like this is a prerequisite. And try to listen to as many as recordings you can buy. I remember that I took it to the letter. I bought, using the discounts during the retreats, I bought many courses. I listened to almost all of them. There are just 2 inner circles missing that I need to catch up with. But the first 2 ones, so the very original ones. So I've left them for the, I don't know, for the future. I watched also too many retreats because some of them were on video. Living Happiness, other videos, Ultimate Freedom, all of them were amazingly interesting. So, of course, in the meanwhile, between knowing of the method in 2016 and going to Elspet, in the meanwhile, I have also bought another retreat, which I paid the full price because I didn't have the access to the discounts. So I remember I spent something like 1,300 euro for a recording. The point that I said to myself, are you crazy? What are you doing? Are you sure? But then I went, I bought that. I mean, it was, from there, it was something that never stopped. So the Sedona Method is still part of my daily living, together with the other things that I do, which I haven't stopped. Of course, I have introduced the Sedona Method as a daily practice, which I really like. I find it a very useful technique. And of course, I changed my mind. The 3 basic questions are very powerful, very, very powerful. But I realized that they are very powerful only when doing the mentorship program. Yeah.
Only when doing the mentorship program.
Yes.
So a lot of people are not going to know what the mentorship program is. So I just wanted to back up a little bit. And, excuse me, there we go. The camera goes crazy. So what you're saying is you had your first exposure, your first taste of the method in 2016, is that right? And then already in 2017, you were diving into a retreat. Was that an advanced retreat already, or
It was a basic one.
a basic retreat? So already, within a year, and then releasing full time, and with the intention of becoming a coach. Is that right?
Yeah.
So you really knew immediately what you wanted from the method. Can I ask you what other techniques you were working with, methodologies, modalities?
Yeah, yes. The main, 20 years ago, I started with the Reiki, which is an energetic technique. Reiki, R-E, yes, Reiki. I started with that using Reiki for myself, also for other people, helping other people. Of course, in that period, I was also practicing Shiatsu. I studied Shiatsu in a school for 4 years. I was also helping people using Shiatsu, but Shiatsu is not a releasing technique, it's just a physical modality. Mostly in that period, I was using Reiki. But after a few years, in 2008, I started using a powerful technique, which is called the pranic healing, which I'm still practicing. I'm teaching, actually. I'm an instructor of pranic healing. So since 2011, I've been teaching pranic healing, starting from 2011. So, of course, in the meanwhile, I studied many releasing techniques, which came from every part of the world. I studied with the spiritual engineering of Slavitsky, Stojakovic, this kind of approach, which is called spiritual engineering mostly. A lot of interesting techniques also on that side. I studied EFT, the technique in which you just tap your meridian points, something like that. I studied Psyche, a technique, I don't know, it should be pretty famous. It's become famous.
What was the name? Psyche, you said?
Psyche. K, like the letter K, Psyche, yeah. It's a technique in which you use certain actions, certain things to incorporate to embody certain beliefs, actually. You formulate a belief, you use physical techniques to incorporate those beliefs into your body system and something like that. But the main technique which I'm still using and teaching is pranic healing, which is mostly an energetic technique which works at the body-mind level, both physically and emotionally, psychologically. So that's what I've been doing for the last 20 years. Of course, also other techniques which I learned, but I haven't spent so much time on them. So it's even useless to quote. Doesn't make much sense. But pranic healing is for sure is the one that gave me mostly all the benefits that I have still with me. Of course, the Sedona Method became a complement because pranic healing is an energetic technique which works on the body mind, but the knowledge, the ability to see actually how all things together work has come to me with the Sedona Method mostly, which was a really breakthrough in consciousness for me. The Sedona Method,
That's interesting. I don't want to jump on everything and not give you an opportunity to speak, Katja, but I just find that fascinating, the relationship of the Sedona Method to the other modalities that you described. You said that kind of, the Sedona Method gave you a different perspective on how these different modalities work together. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because especially using the most advanced technique, which are the fifth way, then later the free way, the no way, they gave me actually a perspective, more detachment in what this body mind is doing, because now I'm doing things with a more detached perspective. At the beginning, of course, it was a body mind identified with the technique that it was practicing. Now there is a lot of detachment, which gives me, I use the term, a perspective which is very nice, because I'm very often when I catch myself trapped in identification, I start just to step back and said, okay, isn't that just what's appearing in this moment? So, I mean, it's just very easy to disidentify with whatever issue is being faced in that moment.
So you kind of you explained a really kind of quick. It sounds so quick paced, but we know it isn't so quick. But kind of like you started thinking, basic questions are kind of silly, and then few years, and you are like, okay, non-dual stuff. It's just apparently happening. You're kind of seeing through the whole kind of a development of the method. You kind of, well, most of us who've been doing this for a while have seen that kind of development, but we are kind of in different stages. I think most of us, how do we see it and take it? But you really seem to have taken a deep dive and thriving with it. It's wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah, also I remember that I asked Ail, of course, I asked about Ail about the coaching program, and then at the end, we are in a sort of, I mean, it's not a coaching program, but something that may be very similar to a coaching program, we may say. I remember that during the retreat in Elspeth, as Ada was mentioning about the advanced retreat, which was only for people who have already attended the basic retreat. It was held only physically. I remember asking Hale, why not doing it on streaming? Because he said something like, because I don't remember what he said. What's the difference? I mean, it is reserved only for people who have attended a retreat. In your administration, you know, people who have already attended a retreat, why not doing it on streaming? Because you can allow people from other parts of the world to attend. I remember he didn't say anything, but I remember that exactly 2018, the first retreat which which was also on streaming. So it was amazing.
Brilliant.
Yeah, in fact, due to that modality, I was very thankful because at the beginning it wasn't like that. I started following my first facilitator training, which of course was recorded. I followed it in 2008. When was it recorded, the facilitator training originally?
I think it's 16, the first one.
Okay, so probably I joined 2017 because I joined the following year. So in the advanced retreat, I joined it in 2018 on streaming. So I have attended the sixth, I think, 18, 19, 20, 21, no? Yeah, 6 advanced retreat up to now, due to the online modality or streaming modality. Otherwise, I wouldn't have gone to the US. It's very demanding because you need to take one day, entire week off, both the flyer. It's also very expensive compared, also because also the course itself is not cheap. We may say that. So the streaming allowed me to be involved with 6 times also in the advanced retreat. As you mentioned before, Katia, actually, I saw with my eyes actually the technique evolved because AIM started very soon to introduce the freeway. I don't remember exactly the year, but maybe 2019, something like that, it started the freeway. It was before COVID. Then now there is the no way. I participated very actively in all this updating. So it was something very nice. I feel very honored to be part of that. I feel very honored is the right word also because I came in the right moment for my life, for how the technique was evolving. As I mentioned before, it was during this program, mentorship program, when Hale asked us to practice the basic technique, which I came back to practice the basic technique. So I forced myself to do some releasing only with the Huju when there was some resistance at the beginning because they are not powerful. If I don't use the one things, if I don't use anything else, how can it be powerful? But then I realized that I was totally wrong. The basic techniques are very powerful, especially I found very powerful the second question, Ujo. Because I remember that when I used to ask questions to myself, most often the question, could you, the answer was no. Could you, no. No way. But then when you ask, would you, if you could, if you were able to, would you let it go? Of course, if I could, I would. And then something started to unravel inside. And with the third question, when? Oh, now, boom. I realized that the three basic questions are very, very powerful, especially the second one.
It's interesting you say that, because I noticed that in my own facilitation, sometimes I came up with, if you could, would you? And that seems to sort of streamline things for people sometimes, if they have somehow a belief that technically they don't know how to, they're not able to, but if they could, yes.
Exactly. That was something that I learned while practicing the basic techniques, because at the beginning, with the second question, oh, would you, I was still stuck with the could you. So I was saying to myself, but I can't, I'm not able, so even if I want, it doesn't make sense. Instead, what you said, I remember listening to this, if you could, would you, I don't remember, there was a coach using that question. Also during a retreat, I learned that. I said, wow, that's amazing. But I haven't given a chance yet at the time. It was only when I started that mentorship program, which I really noticed, because I was forced to practice the basic techniques only for the first period. Also introducing the basic techniques. So I had to focus on that. I realized that they are very powerful, to the point that still now for some issues I still use only the basic techniques. Especially the would you, I like, would you if you could? Oh, yes, I would.
That's so interesting. How interesting that although the method continues to evolve, the very basic tools are actually just as useful. And sometimes we tend to forget that if we're chasing after the latest shiny object. But again, you used the word mentorship program. And so maybe it's time for us to talk about that. Kati, would you? Or Katja, would you like to tell us what that is, or shall I?
Okay, so some might have heard Hale mentioning this. This is a kind of program where Hale decided to open the possibility for, how would I put this? So for people who have been facilitating for some time and using the method for some time, if they were willing to participate in a mentoring group, to become certified at some point, if we kind of follow through all the demands. That's not a proper phrase, but you probably get my meaning.
If we complete all the assignments, yes.
Yes, if we complete all the assignments and Hale sees us kind of being far enough in our skills and ready for it, we will become either certified coaches or certified instructors. And this program has been going on for, started a little before last Christmas 22. We had to do a video assignment to get in, and Hale looked through them himself to see if there's potential in us, so we didn't have to be ready. And it definitely has been, I think, for most of us involved, very good catalyst in pushing us into action and being more kind of, I think we all been really active in using the method, but just sharing it with others even more. Or how have you found it, Paolo? Has it pushed you forward in action?
Yes, actually, yes. He gave a boost. He gave a boost because I was on a standby. On the Italian side, I'm still on a standby because in this moment I'm practicing mostly in the international community. To start doing that consistently in Italy, I want to wait a certification because it can open doors much quicker than trying to promote something for which you are not considered qualified yet. like starting with the half foot instead of. So at the moment, also because in Italy I've been teaching another technique currently, so I don't want to mess up too many things together. I have a plan. I have a plan to do that, of course, to introduce also the Sedona Method. It takes a little bit, not too much, but a little bit, just to be able to do the right steps instead of just going randomly without a strategy. So I want to go directly where I need to go to be effective.
How well is
Yeah.
the method known in Italy? Is it known at all? Is it? I imagine that the books are available in the Italian language, correct? No?
No, exactly. No, the Sedona Method book is not. It is available very recently. The original book, Happiness is Free, which has been translated into Italian, but very recently, 2-3 months ago, something like that, very recently. The original book is not translated in Italian. The method is, there are some references in certain Italian websites to the Sedona Method, but not consistently. There was a certified coach, as far as I knew, which got certified with a batch of 2011. That batch that was the last one to be certified, where mostly all the coaches come from. That period, it was a live certification that ended in 2011. I think that guy in Italy is a certified coach, but he's not practicing. He had this website which is not updated anymore. So I think that there isn't really a presence of the Sedona Method. That's why I want really to do it, but I want to wait. I want to move well. I mean, I want to have a strategy. It doesn't make sense to start like this. Also because this body mind is very vintage, using a French word. I use the technology, but I really think that also live events, face-to-face, when you make a presentation with a group, an audience of people that can ask questions, the physical event has a different energy compared to the online one. That's my point of view. I mean, it's just my point of view. So I want to do also physical events. Of course, I'm also available to travel if needed. It's not a restriction. I can travel physically. So I have a strategy, but the first step is the most important. So I don't want to start like this. I want to wait at least a coach certification, at least. Of course, I'm using it with some friends, of course, but to spread it is another thing. I want to wait because, to be honest, I don't feel any limitation on my side. I know how to facilitate in my language. I have no issue. Maybe I'm struggling a little bit when I facilitate in English for lack of terms, for lack of vocabulary that I can use. So I restrict myself. Sometimes I would like also when I run support calls together with Stathis or Owen. Also, Stephen was kind to invite me. He has invited me again at the end of September. To be honest, I can do it without problem. It comes natural. I've noticed that there are some limitations in terms of the kind of elaboration that I can do on a certain issue. Sometimes I do like to elaborate more, but I find myself hitting a wall because I want to use a term, but I don't know what's exactly the term in English. So I just limit myself mostly to the questions, just saying something in addition, but mostly I go directly to the racing questions. At least in English. In Italian, I don't have problems. So I don't see any limitation in Italy, luckily. Also because I've studied really the method a lot. I've listened to all the programs. I remember all the nuances. Also the there was an amazing releasing that Haley used to do in a financial liberation retreat, which I still use, for example, but he's not using anymore. That is, could you like go wanting to fit in that situation, wanting to fit yourself? I still use certain things that I've learned in past courses. I know the technique because I've studied really a lot. They've been 7 years, very, very intensive. So every day, hours of releasing. I found myself releasing while sleeping. That's craziness.
Oh,
Religion wasn't leaving me alone even during sleep sometimes. So I put myself during a dream asking questions to myself. So, so
oh,
amazing.
you are really taking it into every part of your life.
Well,
Was
Too
it
much.
effective in your sleep?
Yeah, I mean, it was useful to also use the releasing to get to sleep, because when you want to get to sleep, you don't sleep because there is a wanting, there is an emotional turmoil arising. Oh, if I don't sleep enough, tomorrow morning I won't be able. All this kind of beliefs, which emotional charge which comes up. So I used also that. Together with also with the other techniques which I know, to start releasing also to go to sleep easily, even if this body mind doesn't sleep enough a number of hours. I've noticed that it's a belief. I remember also Hale said this twice, that we have this belief that the body mind needs to rest at least 8 hours, otherwise we have this belief that the body mind is not able to function in life. It's a belief, actually. It's a belief. I slept sometimes 2-3 hours. I was perfectly fine the following day. So I started to use also the releasing for this kind of practical things.
That is brilliant. But I do agree. I definitely have been struggling with sleep too myself, and I've been kind of surprised how well I can function with little sleep. Not always, but sometimes. So it definitely seems to have at least partially a belief, kind of a. I remember, I think that was in one retreat, I think it was 18, an in-person retreat where there was a guy, well, this is like telling another person's story, but cutting it short, he was basically following his sleep with a kind of device that tells you how well you're sleeping. And one night, one morning, he noticed that, oh, I've slept really beautifully. What a perfect day. And he had lots of energy. Everything was fine until he checked took a closer look and saw that the device was telling him that he had been sleeping in times when he was already at work. And then he realized that his little son had come to the bed. It was somehow beside the bed, or I don't know where the device was, but kind of like it told him how his son had slept. And since he believed he had slept perfectly well, he was feeling really energetic and fine. So he decided that, well, okay, maybe I don't need kind of any machine or device telling me whether I slept well or not. And he had been sleeping better since. So that's another story about how we are being told by studies, you have to do this and this. It's not just the sleep, but all sorts of health and stuff that we take for granted and believe, and then make a rule. But I really like the way you you made a kind of full circle kind of thinking the basic questions were kind of not working and then coming back to the basic questions. And so you definitely have noticed too, I think most of us that have noticed that our favorite questions keep changing and the favorite ways to use the method. So it's not a static, like you start from the basics and then you kind of are done with them and then you need something new, but you can circle back and find new ways to use the old favorites and find new ones too. Or how have you found it?
You're totally right. I agree with you because, for example, still now I change all the techniques according to the moment. I mean, all of us know very well that when there is a move coming, full identification, in that moment, the no way, the free way doesn't work for me, doesn't work at all. I need basic questions, mostly welcoming and letting go. Because with the no way, is that what's appearing? I hear a fuck off inside. I don't care. So I need to use when there is a me coming with the entire full charge of thoughts, emotions. You need to at least I need to use the basic welcoming, giving myself permission to resist, to want to change what I want to change. So I really become very basic with the technique. Of course, there are moments in which the me is less present, so I have more ability to get in touch, to tap into the free way, which I still like, even if Hale is not using that anymore, mostly. Of course, I use also the no way. I changed the questions a little bit, because people, the apparently happening doesn't understand what is, unless they are people from our community, which already listen to Hale explaining what is apparently happening. So I mostly use, isn't that just what's appearing, what's happening in this moment? It's very technical, I mean, it's very rude, but make people understand mostly what it is about. Otherwise, what's apparently happening, people start thinking, what is that? Unless, of course, there are people which belong to our community, they are very used to this kind of language. So you're right, I changed the techniques. Sometimes I'm sure that all of us have experienced that. I noticed that the welcome is amazing. I only for a certain period, I do only welcoming because, as also Steven said several times, the letting go still has some string attached that you let go because you want to fix something. That's the main reason why you ask the question if you could let go. Otherwise, you wouldn't ask that question. So even though there is this desire to change things, I noticed that even the letting go, at least for me, also for clients, still works very, very well. It's very powerful. But like I know that Steven, like the welcoming, I've noticed that the welcoming is very powerful as well. I've noticed that very often I use the welcoming, but I was not welcoming, even though I was answering with a yes. It was a physical yes, made from the mouth, which said yes, but inside it was no way. It helped me. Yeah, please.
I just want to jump in a little bit because, I mean, just in case anybody is having a hard time following, there is sort of you've been talking about the freeway and the no way. The original name was the fifth way. And what we're talking about really is non-duality, or if you wish, the state of non-dual awareness, which is, at least in my experience, the heart of any meditation practice as well. And which, yeah, it's really the no longer identifying with thoughts, with sensations in the body that very often that I am angry, that's the identification. There is anger passing through, or there is awareness of anger. This is again a sort of taking a step back into what we really are, which is, and then there are no words to describe that, unfortunately. So then suddenly the words become useless. So some people seem to take more naturally to non-duality. Other people seem to struggle with it. But what I've noticed also over time is that, because Hale's been talking about non-duality pretty much since I started in 2003, if I'm remembering it correctly. The fifth way, again, was always kind of an advanced technique, and it was always available. But now all of that is becoming much more of an emphasis in what we're doing. And yet, the simple questions still have merit. They still work. I just find it all so interesting to see how this has evolved and how people take to it. And I think what you're saying, we very often change the wording, or it's very useful to have other people facilitate us as well, because the mind becomes armored. That's actually Hale's language. It becomes used to these phrases, it anticipates, and then that becomes less effective. So
Yeah,
that's the
definitely.
explanation that came out of the mouth just now. I don't know. Whoever wants to continue.
Yeah, I could go on that, but I actually want to go back to the releasing in Italy thing, because we've been talking with people from different countries, and I want to ask you too, since you've learned the method in English, haven't you? Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Now there is the If the Happiness is Free was translated into Italy, but you probably have been releasing in Italy before that, at least in your head, I would think. So did you find the kind of translation, the terminology used there, was it good, or do you find it's easy to release? Does it translate well into Italy?
I haven't read the book yet. Ingrid gave it to me, gifted to me. I need still to read it. I haven't had any time. As far as I've just gone through very quickly, not reading it, just gone through. Mostly it's a Lester Levinson book, that one. There is a part of Hale which I introduced the releasing, but it's not totally on releasing. It's mostly the binding of the 5 original books from Lester, if I'm not wrong. So it's not a book especially on releasing. There are some too, but when I will read them, I will let you know. Okay. Yeah, of course. In Italian, you will change the style of the wording, because they need to fit also a sort of musicality in Italian. They need to fit not only the efficacy, but also the way that the words sound in Italy. So there is also a musicality that is helpful in that. But mostly, it's easily translatable. Can you say it translatable? Yeah, it's easily translatable in Italian.
Oh, I'm fascinated by what you're talking about with the musicality. I'm just imagining in my head, how would that work? How would that look? Would you let go? I don't know. I understand the musicality.
Yeah, you've been to Italy, if I'm not wrong, right?
Excuse me?
You've been to Italy. You worked in Italy, right?
Oh my God, no. I lived in Europe for 30 years.
You're right. Yeah, I remember. You worked in a restaurant, an Italian restaurant, but you haven't come to Italy, right?
In that sense, you could say that I worked in Italy, because, in fact, everybody spoke Italian. It was entirely Italian territory. It was a restaurant, and I loved it, sure, the whole feeling of it. But no, I don't know. For some reason, I never actually stepped foot in your country. And maybe I just need the right timing, occasion, etc., opportunity. But I'd love to do that. Yeah.
Yeah. So releasing in Italian is not very difficult. You can just translate the words. You had to find the right composition of the sentence, which gives some musicality, and that's all. It's not difficult. Of course, you can use the entire vocabulary of your language. You have a perfect English, Kasia, but I think that maybe also in your language you will find probably access to specific terms that maybe in English do not come up to your mind. No, so I think that maybe releasing is in our own native language give us a boost in terms of ability to use the method, of course. But I mean, also in English, I'm not struggling a lot. I've been running support calls, so I don't have any issue. Sometimes I listen to people, maybe the connection is not good. Some people speak a very strict dialect. I don't understand completely all the words, but I guess I can understand the meaning. So I get to the point, I can lead the releasing without problems.
Yes,
I mean, always says it's not about the words. So I definitely agree with you there. Yeah. Yeah, Stephen, you were saying.
Exactly. Yeah, the words are only just very crude tools. They could only point, So who's to say?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Sometimes I can witness greater releasing happening during some support calls. Really, just staying after a releasing question, just 5-10 seconds in silence. I notice it because I have some familiarity with energetics because I've been teaching energetic techniques. So I feel the flow of energy, how it moves and so on. So sometimes I feel that boom, there is a void created, boom, that the releasing is happening for the group. So sometimes it happens during a moment of break, not when you talk, but when you are silent for a moment after a question. I remember one time, the first time that I met Stephen online, we had a quick release. I was introducing, it was an assignment from Hale, I was introducing the resistance. I haven't prepared anything, so I started talking to more resistance. And Stephen said, "Oh, stay." But maybe just keep your time, just ponder the words. So it was, said, okay, you're totally right. I was rushing. That's not the way that the releasing could work well. So I learned from that observation that Stephen gave me that moment. I don't know if he remembers that we were just 3-4 people in that meeting. It was a meeting that Stephen, who is very involved in our community, he's amazing in what he does. It was something that I don't know if it was a Saturday event that you are doing online for the practicing of the assignments for the mentorship group.
I think it was maybe that. It could have been a facilitation practice call. We do a lot of those. And yeah, I do also bring the mentorship group together weekly too.
Yeah, but I remember it was somewhere along that, I don't know, facilitator call, or maybe it was a mentorship group practice that I remember it was myself, you, there was Kim. I practiced with you. It was really, in that moment, I really thought that this method, it was in that moment that I realized that how powerful it can be when you really can add some musicality to the wording. So using a word, just take a break, breathe in the meanwhile, ask another question. A great releasing happened also very recently in the last support call during a moment of break, during a moment when you ask a question, when would you like to do that? Then you stay silent for 10 seconds. In that moment, you feel the void, the energetic void that the entire group, including also the facilitator, is releasing. So it's amazing.
I think that kind of lightens or brings back to focus really well the thing how beneficial and powerful the group calls are. Like even just releasing with the partner kind of multiplies the effects, but when there's more people, it's kind of like sometimes it has felt when running a group release, it's like surfing. I've never surfed, but I imagine that's how it feels. Kind of like you just follow kind of the waves and don't do anything much. It just comes as it goes, and it's just being there. It's really beautiful. And being
You're
on
right.
the other side, when someone is leading the group release, you can sense that it's more powerful than just doing it, especially doing it by yourself. It's just like Stephen said, like when you're doing it on your own, your mind knows what you're going to ask the next time. So it's like blah, 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 blah. You never know what the other person is going to say next.
Exactly. You're totally right. I also noticed that, of course, during the support calls, we all of us run a lot of group releasing. And I've noticed that when we start, sometimes people are suggesting a topic, so you don't know. Actually, you don't have, even if you wanted, you don't have time to prepare anything. So you just follow the flow. It's amazingly powerful. Last Tuesday, for example, during the support call, a person asked for a releasing on peace, but something practical, not something theoretical. I don't know. I just started and the words came, and it was something very, very nice. It was really very experiential. All of us, because also myself, felt that there was no words, no noise, no sounds, nothing, just peace. With a simple releasing, without going technicalities. So when we trust, as Kasia said, when we trust the power that knows the way, the clear reason, intuitive knowingness, is amazing how the words that come are exactly the words needed for the group.
Yeah.
So I agree completely with what you said. It's something amazing. In fact, that's something that I didn't like very much of the last assignment regarding the video, because the video, when you start, is new, but when you record it 3, 4, 5 times, it's not, I mean, it flows because every time there are little differences, of course. It's never the same. But the main topic, the main things that you're going to say are pretty much prepared, because if you record it 5, 6, 7 times, necessarily, unless you like Stephen did that. I think you did it the last day or something like that. Or
Oh, so we're talking about the last assignment that we had with Hale in the mentorship group, and the assignment was just to create a 5 to 6 minute video, which was a group release, and that was it. And my experience has been that, as you said, when there are others present, when there is an audience, then facilitation just comes automatically somehow. In other words, and it's not me. It's not that I'm not the one being clever, or it's not that. It's actually, if you will, the ability to step back and allow presence or non-duality or the power that is the way to just do that. It sort of comes intuitively, not even sort of. It's exactly an intuitive arising of speaking. I'm sure you experienced that in facilitation as well. For me to do a video to just speak into a computer without an audience is, yeah, exactly. You begin to repeat yourself to get the whole thing. And then after a while, I just find myself being lost a little bit. So that last assignment, I struggled. And in fact, we had a similar assignment, which was the first assignment to actually join the program. And I cheated. I actually invited others to come and take part. And I was actually doing a facilitation in front of live people, which again was just me speaking into a camera, but totally different context. And that's what I submitted for my first video to be a part of the program. So actually Hale afterwards told us that, well, we could actually work with an audience in making videos. And I was hitting myself. I mean, so I know that for me, it's easier to facilitate when I'm actually facilitating with others. I have a hard time just speaking into a camera. Does that resonate with you at all? Yeah.
Absolutely, you're right. When you're in front of people, it's much easier. Even though I think that it's useful also to practice in front of a camera, because we live in a world made of technology, which maybe in the future we'll need to provide a certain kind of short releasing, so we cannot invite every time all the people. So it's a good exercise, a good practice also to start releasing in front of a camera, even though, as you said, you feel sometimes lost. You stop in the middle of what I was saying, so, because there is no one, there is no flow. I mean, you're just flowing into yourself. It's a little bit more difficult. I agree with you. I struggled a little bit also myself, but I thought it was a good exercise, because in the future we'll need to, because that's the direction that this world is taking, online, releasing videos, because you can have access to many more people compared to the people that you could reach only with live events, something like that. So learning how to be in front of a camera is a good exercise. And you were not the only one struggling, because as I know, the entire group was struggling with that. They were up to the last week. I think only 2-3 people had recorded a video. The deadline was I submitted the video 1 week before the deadline because I didn't want to get to the last moment because it was hot. I wanted to be free. It was the end of June. I wanted to go doing something else instead of staying there at home doing a video. So I ended up 1 week before. But I remember that the last week was really challenging for many people in our group, in our community. Probably also due to that, because in front of a camera you need to overcome some resistance, some sense of feeling silly. What am I doing? I see myself. But you're right. You're totally right.
So yeah, being in front of a camera really is a part of bringing the method to a wider audience. And that's definitely the point of this podcast, as I'm sure Katja will agree. Yeah. And also the Friday support call, which I have been, I think we now have 27 support calls, which have been recorded here on this YouTube channel, which, yeah, that's helpful, including also from you. So, you know, and yeah, actually, it's also interesting to go back and look at those support calls because there are some very interesting parts that we could simply cut from the video and just make standalone, you see? But that's maybe.
Listen to all of them. Yeah, I very often I cannot join live, but I don't miss any recording because I learn, as you said, we learn from other people. We cannot ask the entire set of questions. Sometimes I learn from the way that Kasia asks questions, you ask questions. I've learned some questions from you, Stephen, which I stole, I use sometimes. I learned also other, for example, an amazing. I remember an amazing one that when you said, could you trade that for freedom? It's an amazing question. I like that question. I've never heard of it before. So I started using it during some releasing, both support calls, also one-to-one releasing with people. So we learn also, I learned the way that Katja asks questions, the way the Stathis ask questions, the way the Tian asks questions, Leah. Every person has a different approach. Some people are mostly on the welcoming side, welcoming. They don't almost ever ask a question about, could you let it go? But you learn that approach. You get really empathic with that way of asking questions. So we learn a lot from each other, I think. So really, yes, I listen to them. Thank you again. I've already thanked you privately, but I've done it also in the last call that we did. It was March or April, I think, in the super call. But you are doing also you now with the podcast, Katja. You are doing an amazing work, both of you, because our community is growing due to that. I've noticed also in the chats when there is the support 24 hours, now it's much more, there are much more people compared to before. So also in the support calls, I mean, there are many support calls because all of us are doing support calls. There are audience, there are people interested, there are people that are really willful to learn, to listen, to learn, to facilitate. So you are doing an amazing job. Really, thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Katja. Really, something that is really worthwhile. Of course, it's beneficial for us, but also for you, because by doing that, also you learn a lot from.
Oh, definitely. And thank you for the thanks, and thank you for being here. And I think you kind of put it really beautifully together, how we really benefit all. So there's more buzz, more people doing slightly differently. We learn from each other. And it really enriches us all. Kind of, we see this different shades and kind of perspectives of using this method. So
yeah, and we're definitely going to include links below to the resources which you just mentioned, including the on-call Sedona Method channel, where people can just 24 hours, so anytime during the day, they can just jump in and say help. And somebody can say, here I am. So yeah. But I also wanted to tell you that you thanked me for this phrase that you came up, which you've been using. I stole that from somebody else. I can't even remember who.
Yeah, that's how it works. We learn something that resonates with our way of asking questions. We use it. I remember also other releasing which I learned from other facilitators. I use them because sometimes they are very effective. They use a different perspective. For example, another good one, I think it was from Adelia. Would it be okay to let go? It was very nice. It was something, instead of would you let it go, it was a sort of free way, without involving me. There was a nice way to ask a would you question, because sometimes could it be released? It's easy. Would it be released? I don't know if would it be released, but would it be okay to release it? Wow. It's amazingly beautiful. There is some music in there. Would it be okay? Yes. Yeah, would it be okay to release it?
Would it be okay?
I love the way you...
Yeah, exactly. Does not... Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't point to an individual.
It's beautiful the way you bring the music into.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. I took it from, I think it was Adelia during a monthly support call. I think, I don't know if it originated from her or she learned from other facilitators, but that shows exactly what you were saying, that we learn one from the other, because sometimes there is a question that is very effective in that specific moment for the person that you have in front of you. So it's amazing. It's amazing, beautiful. It's really an enrichment of our community, of also our way of releasing, helping people. We have more tools that we can use.
And I really see that first of all, the community has been growing. The pandemic was a big part, I think, of really creating what we have now, as several hundred people meeting online, WhatsApp and Signal and Facebook, and sharing the method with each other. So I've seen that this is, of course, growing, but also that I wonder if it seems like people are more receptive, and that somehow whereas I just remember that, I started the method 20 years ago, and I started and stopped, and I found gains and made progress, and it was useful, but it was kind of like a slow path. And I really feel like things are just accelerating right now.
Absolutely, you're right. Things are really accelerating. The entire method is shifting to a higher level, which includes also the basics, everything which comes from, let's say, from the past. But it's amazing, because you really now, we can say that the method is really complete. You can use whatever perspective you want, starting from a me that needs to fix something, which is still very, very powerful, up to the no way, which is still something that we need to familiarize, because for most of us it's something new. We need to familiarize because our minds try to make something out of it, of this no way technique, try to do something about it. So it's nice. It's further development is the last one in our community. So it's very beautiful. This technique is very powerful. Even though I've noticed that when we release alone, at least myself, when I release alone, there is still the tendency to go in a loop. It's much easier when you facilitate, receive facilitating from another person, because there is an exchange. It's much easier. Sometimes if you release alone, it happens to me, I get stuck 1 day, 2 days with the same releasing. I don't succeed in releasing, if we may use this term, which is incorrect. It happens, releasing not happen. But when 2-3 minutes you call a colleague, just ask for support, maybe in 5 minutes everything is gone. So I've noticed that the releasing with a partner is much more effective in practical terms. Even though Hale says that there is no difference, up to now I still find some difference. Maybe it's a limitation of this body-mind, but in this moment I still feel some difference when you release alone and when you release with a partner. I don't know for you how it is.
Yeah, me too.
Oh, just exactly what you said. I find it much more, well, so for me, it's releasing with a partner. Yes, is powerful, definitely. For me, facilitating is even more powerful because in order to facilitate, the small I has to take a step back, which is really releasing. That's what releasing is. And I also find that so we have Hale as our teacher, and releasing on my own very often is listening to recordings that Hale has made. And those can be powerful, but I find that working with Hale live on a telephone call or audio video, this is more powerful. And I think attending a conference or an event face to face has even more benefit. That's just been my experience, but I've heard this from others as well. And I think it has to do with somehow the presence that others bring, and particularly a teacher, and how that is more intensive face to face.
Yeah, I think it's, at least for me, it's much easier to focus when I'm in person somewhere than when I'm behind the laptop. Laptop stuff can be really powerful, or just audio courses, but yeah, I definitely agree that in-person stuff is more powerful. However, I am really, really grateful we are living now when we have this opportunity. And I'm grateful for Paolo for suggesting the advanced retreat streaming, because you might have been the final straw that made him do that. And I really enjoy the possibility, though I am looking forward to in-person retreats where I could attend to, in Europe preferably. But so I'm really happy and grateful for all of these possibilities, because now we don't have to send the CDs and cassette tapes all over the place. We can. And just like 20 years ago, just making this kind of call would have been impossible. Making a phone call this long, like abroad, would have cost a fortune. So, and here we are, just speaking to each other across the continents and oceans. So I think it's, in a way, it's kind of like what Hale has said about these broadcasted retreats, that it kind of represents how we are all one, and the place doesn't matter because it doesn't really exist, that we are all one and at the same place. Though there seems to be a little difference in favor of the in-person stuff.
Well, of course, yes, including also this Italian musicality.
Yes. Yeah, I really love that.
Actually, I was just laughing because at the beginning, before we got on the call, Katja, you were asking Paolo how to properly pronounce his name. And I've also struggled to pronounce yours as well, which is Finnish. So, and these things, yeah. Right. But yeah, they don't matter as much, do they? They're important to get right, but, you know.
You're right, yeah. Musicality can help, because when people receive questions, the music, it has its effect. It's something that is compared to asking a question which sounds in that language very tough, very rude. So, of course, musicality, also in English, they sound very well. So, would you let it go? Would you? When?
I remember you mentioning at some call that you also dance. So is that kind of music and rhythm is part of your life? Is it?
I like music a lot. I've danced for a really limited amount of time, for 2-3 years, but I couldn't call myself a dancer. But I have a strong sense of rhythm. I like music. I like when this body listens to music, goes in an altered state, something which is going to heaven. So musicality is an important part. I also support myself listening to music, which gives this body-mind a sense of relaxation, a sense of peace. So you're right, music is very important. Rhythm and music is very important for this body-mind. Steven reminded me that time when I was in that call with him, when I didn't know what to say about resistance because I haven't prepared anything. So I started, when you are not confident about something, you start putting words on one word after another. So you can feel the entire time the impression that you have. So I thought, resistance. They said, no, it's not. But why don't you slow down a little bit? I said, wow, that was exactly what I did in that moment. Still now, during this podcast, I'm speaking very fast, but during the releasing support calls, when I release with people, I've learned to take my time to add some breaks between one word and another. So thank you, Steven, also for that.
Actually, one thing I've learned to enjoy on these support calls is the silence that sometimes happens when people are not ready to speak up yet. That's actually quite, I don't know, there's something very sweet and very enjoyable about it. I don't mind it at all. Yeah. So, Katja, I think you were going to say something. Maybe not.
Yeah, I was just going to, I thought the rhythm and the dance thing kind of brings up how Hale has sometimes, so oftentimes compared life to a dance, kind of like there are no, you can't get the Sedona method wrong, you can't get releasing wrong. We are all just in this dance where there are no missteps. And I really love that kind of, because in dance sometimes you circle around and sometimes you take apparently steps back, and even you're never in the wrong place. Well, figuratively speaking, in the dance floor you might sometimes be in the wrong place, but in the dance you kind of there's no kind of a goal line, like you aren't running 100 meters to get there as quickly as possible. You are just enjoying the dance. So yeah, I think Sedona Method is a beautiful assistance for us in that.
I think also that all of us are really growing in terms of a more structured personality, because by doing that, all of us are learning not only technical ways to release, to help people in technical terms, but also there is a sense of growing happening to no one, but there is a growing in the community, also in the way that we interact in our private life. I see a huge shift in that. So
Yeah.
I think this mentorship program was a real shift for many of us.
Yes, I agree. And I really love kind of how it's, in a way, gently forced us or pushed us to share this method more, because we clearly all love it and really have got so much out of it. So we get to share it more. I think it's a gift. I think we could talk for much, much longer, but maybe we could say thank you, Paolo. It's been a really pleasure to have you here. You also, besides, I want to mention you do the support call every Tuesday, is it?
Yeah, we do support call every Tuesday. Of course, they are free support call. We do it every Tuesday. Is at 7 p.m. European time. It's done by myself together. I've noticed that when we do it with two people, there is much more energy. There is a different kind of energy flowing. I mean, it's very beautiful also if you do it alone. There isn't, of course. But when we do it alone, there is a sort of, I don't know, energetic compensation. There is, I don't know, something flowing. It's a soft, a wave that goes like this. It's nice. It's very nice. We do it every Tuesday. We skip only the Tuesday when there is the graduate support call that is organized by Hale or by coaches and instructors or facilitators, if we may use this term. We skip the Tuesday, but the other 3 times we do it every Tuesday.
Brilliant. We'll put the link.
And those events will be in the links below, definitely, yeah. Well, can I say grazie mille?
Of course, grazie mille to you, to Katia, because it's a real pleasure to stay here together. So, grazie.
Grazie.
Okay, then